Please welcome moderators Steve Rochlin, CEO at ImpactROI, and panelists former Congressman Carlos Curbelo, co-chair of the Climate Solutions Foundation, and SAP's Kevin Richards.
Great. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Thrilled to be here. Thank you so much to BSA, the Software Alliance, for having this fascinating set of discussions. I'm really looking forward to moderating this panel. My name is Steve Rochlin. I am CEO of ImpactROI. We actually do quite a bit of work on the issues of how tech enables sustainability. I am so honored to be joined by former Congressman and co-chair of the Climate Solutions Foundation, Carlos Curbelo, and also Vice President and Head of Government Affairs for SAP, Kevin Richards. And so let me just set the stage for the conversation that we're going to have. When we talk about the enabling potential of digital technology, there's actually a lot of fascinating and exciting work that's out there. Groups like the World Economic Forum, the Global Enabling Sustainability Initiative estimate that just the pace of the adoption of digital technology that the world is on right now will help us reduce carbon emissions by anywhere from around 10 to 20% from a 2015 baseline. That is amazing. There's additional studies that have come out which have shown that it is very likely a causal factor for nations that are able to make strong progress against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. A causal factor is their rate of adoption of digital technology, that the more that they make access and adopt and increase in systems, both in the private sector and public sector, the better they start to perform across all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals. We're also seeing that technology, research is showing, is absolutely fundamental to preserving and protecting human and labor rights around the world. And last but not least, there's some fascinating studies which show that around 2027, 2028, the size of the digital technology for sustainability commercial opportunity, the market for this will be anywhere from $20 to $30 billion globally for commercial enterprise. So this is real, it is very, very exciting, and it is growing all the time, and I'm excited to dive in with our panelists. And so Kevin, I want to start with you. How do you see the role of technology? How do you see it supporting and advancing sustainability?
Sure. Well, thanks, Steve. And just to provide the audience with a little context on SAP, SAP is the largest enterprise software company globally. We have about 440,000 customers across 26 industry sectors. And we have a global network that has products and goods and services running through that network, and it runs about 3.7 trillion in commerce on an annual basis through that network. And that really enables SAP to see a good part of the world's GDP and touch every corner of the US GDP. In fact, 87% of the global commerce is produced by SAP members. And really, our mission is to help the world run better and help to improve people's lives. And sustainability is really at the core of that strategy for SAP. We really do have a focus and a vision for our world to have a world of zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. And technology certainly is a central part to what we're seeing in sustainability. Of course, we're seeing from investors and regulators and consumers a demand to have more insights into products. And for today's corporate leaders, it's not just inevitable that you're going to manage your top line and your bottom line, but corporate leaders are being scrutinized how they manage their green line and how they're becoming more sustainable businesses. Are they employing sustainable business practices? And SAP has been really working in this field for over 10 years. We are the #1 ranked company according to the Dow Jones Sustainable Index. So we really do, as a company, put our money where our mouth is. And by the end of 2023, we'll be carbon neutral as a company. And that's 2 years before our original goal of 2025. And we also moved up our target to be a net zero company by 2030 and move that up from 2050. But what we're seeing is that we have technology that helps our customers measure their carbon footprint. Just like you see labels on food products today that help inform business decisions when it comes to your diet or your family's diet or understanding your health choices and health consequences, companies in a lot of ways are being looked at by discerning consumers on their carbon footprint and what does that mean to society, and are they contributing to a common good to help reduce the carbon footprint of the world. So our technology called Climate 21 is really helping our customers measure that climate footprint across their enterprise. And we're also seeing a lot of activity around recycling as well, and measuring the carbon footprint on zero waste, and what governments and what companies are doing in terms of recycling and reducing waste and the carbon footprint as well. And I have some data points that I'll share. Maybe we go into a little bit more about what we're seeing from our customers in those areas as well. But our innovation is really helping our customers, eliminate slavery from the supply chains, optimize resources and productivity, predict and prevent disasters, and eliminate gender inequality, and help educate people who never had the chance to enter a classroom. Sustainability is really part of that broader picture of what companies are doing to become good corporate citizens, and we're really seeing a lot of emphasis and a lot of feedback from our customers. And then there's questions about, what do you use for a measurement when it comes to the carbon footprint and the role of government perhaps in that effort, and what private sector has been doing in terms of that area as well. But in our view, in order to get to the goal of zero emissions and zero waste and zero inequality, technology is really fundamental to that core, and we really see sustainability as the next frontier in terms of digital transformation, which I know you've been hearing from a lot of panelists today about the role of technology and how digital transformation is playing a role in different areas, including IP and in sustainability. But we believe that we really can't get to that brighter place that we all want to go without technology.
Kevin, thank you. Carlos, let me ask you the same question. How do you see digital tech helping to advance sustainability?
So this question really made me think back at the education reform movement, which I think was one of the most successful in the history of our country. Back in the 70s and 80s, we kind of knew there was something wrong with our schools. A lot of schools had incidents of violence, low graduation rates, but there were all sorts of theories and speculation about why that was. But people didn't really know. And then in the early to mid 90s, a group of governors, mostly Republicans, but some Democrats as well, came up with the idea of measuring what was happening in schools. In other words, standardized testing and disaggregating data. And that really revealed the major crisis and the immorality of our public education system, where some schools were doing well, the ones in wealthy neighborhoods, and schools in low-income neighborhoods were failing children. Children were graduating who couldn't read. So with this data, it kind of raised the curtain on the truth about what was happening. It allowed people to come up with potential solutions and then also to test those solutions. So I think when it comes to this question of sustainability and even climate change, for a lot of years there's been this it's been an abstract notion, right? It's something that people can't see, maybe just like schools. If you live in certain neighborhoods and you hear about all these problems in schools, you say, well, my kid's school's great. I don't know what people are talking about. Well, what digital tech is going to allow us to do, not just in this space, but especially in this space, is to measure and to turn theories into facts, right? So for me, it's extremely exciting as a former policymaker, both in the education space. I served on the school board in Miami-Dade County for 4 years, and then in the United States Congress. The fact that lawmakers and leaders at every level, in corporations, NGOs, are going to have access to so much valuable information, it's completely, revolutionary. And it's going to make us so efficient. JP Chavez, who's here, was talking the other day, he's my partner at a public affairs firm, about what this could mean for medicine and for healthcare in terms of empowering people to make good choices and maybe putting some doctors out of business. I don't know. But the point is that this needs to be embraced because it is going to help make the world function better. And from a policy lens, it's really going to help us make fact-based decisions. And a lot of these silly debates about what's real and what's not, and what's causing damage to the planet and what's not, those will all be put to rest by hard quantifiable information and data that digital tech promises to offer and is already doing, as SAP does for its clients all over the world.
So Carlos, I want to pick up on that last point, and sort of we're in a really, really, let's call it an interesting time right now in the field of sustainability and now the most villainous term in America, ESG. And right now you've got companies which on the one hand have never been under more pressure from their investors to deliver strong return on investment. At the same time, those investors are now asking them to provide extreme detail on their sustainability performance and evidence that they're making progress on their environmental and social performance. At the same time, it's becoming highly charged and politicized. The left is very strong in what their demands are. The right's very strong in what their demands are. So I'd be interested to hear, what's a business to do? What are some of the challenges and opportunities in being more sustainable as a business? And how can digital technology maybe be a sort of a tool of reason in this very shaky arena? And Kevin, Carlos, either one of you want to jump in on this first?
Sure. Well, I think that, too, a little bit transitioning from the last question about the use of technology and how technology is improving sustainability, SAP is also using AI in terms of running smart factories so they can improve their operations, reduce their carbon footprint, know what energy output they're using. But what we're seeing from our customers across those 26 industries is some pretty ambitious goals, ESG goals, that companies are starting to set themselves. And what they are coming back to us with is they see a lack of reliable, comparable data across supply chains, especially comes to scope 3 emissions, which are particularly difficult to get your arms around with, because if you look at the entire supply chain upstream and downstream, it's very complex on giving you a good picture into your scope 3 emissions. But understanding carbon emissions across the entire value chain really does require collaboration between stakeholders from industry, technology, and government. And companies must be able to, report and act on reliable and accessible emissions data if we're going to truly address these challenges. And I know it's a very passionate topic on both the right and the left, but at SAP we really say you can't manage what you can't measure. That's why you're seeing a lot of activism from the ground up, not only from investors, but from consumers and different stakeholders across the entire ecosystem. And SAP recently released a paper with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to help define and advance ways that carbon emissions are accounted for and how data is shared across supply chain partners throughout, through technology. And we really do believe that companies need to treat carbon like they do financial data, and a carbon accounting system that mirrors the financial accounting world could help companies and consumers understand the real impact of their products. And to this end, companies could pass credible emissions data along the value chain from one company to another, so to understand the implications when it comes to specific products and services as a type of carbon invoice. So really trying to put some, if you really want to truly address this issue, having transparency and accountability is a major part of the equation. And again, this isn't necessarily being driven from the boardroom down, but it's really being driven from shareholders and consumers up as well. So I think that's kind of the equation that we're seeing from our customers as well.
Carlos?
Yeah, I think if you're interested in advancing sustainability, I think one of the most important contributions you can make is to try to make the policy-making environment more stable and sustainable, so to speak. You talked about ESG. I mean, in some states, companies get rewarded for promoting ESG or adopting good ESG practices. Now we're seeing that in other states, companies are being punished. Some investment firms are being punished. This is unhealthy. Same thing is happening with the IRA now. We have hundreds of billions of dollars of tax credits that were approved last year, and now they're under threat. It's very difficult for businesses to make long-term investments when there's so much uncertainty about the policy environment. So something that we try to do at the Climate Solutions Foundation, and SAP is a big part of that, is promote good relationships between all of the stakeholders in this space, because we think as we build trust and dialogue among all the different stakeholders, we're going to get to a more stable policy-making environment, and companies are going to feel comfortable making the investments that at the end of the day are going to yield better outcomes, obviously for the companies themselves, for their bottom lines, but more broadly for society. And making a contribution doesn't necessarily mean getting involved politically or donating to specific members or even joining organizations like the Climate Solutions Foundation. You all, your firms, have access to data, to tools, to information that can really push and pull lawmakers. Something else that product we came across the other day was, because the sustainability movement also needs to be held to account. And we know the big debate about carbon offsets, and some people believe in them, other people think they're greenwashing. Well, we met a firm that is using the blockchain so that people can make a direct connection between whatever their contribution is for carbon offsets, for example, if you're going to take a flight, and where that money is going and what it's actually doing to reduce global warming or carbon pollution. That's just remarkable, and those kinds of tools put in front of policymakers can really make a difference. Look, this is what pollution means in your district, in your city, in your block. We have friends who are working on the methane hub, and they're putting a satellite up in space that is going to be able to measure methane. And no one's going to be able to lie about methane emissions. So this is the kind of accountability that, again, is going to eliminate these elements of abstract, ambiguous policy areas where we will now have facts. We will have hard information, and people will have to decide if they're for or against pollution, right? If they're for or against better healthcare outcomes in their communities. So again, the possibilities here are endless. We probably cannot even imagine them. But I would say that an urgent priority is to try to create bipartisan consensus, to try to bring people together on this issue so that firms don't get punished for investing in the technologies and the solutions that the world requires.
So Carlos, if I may, let me stay with you, because I'm really curious to go deeper in this question of what role and what can government do to continue to push forward more sustainable behaviors that are enabled by digital technology?
Well, look, I think there's some obvious things that can be done. I've, for a long time, been a fan of carbon pricing because it empowers the consumer and every actor in society, really, to make good decisions that will be better for them economically and will be better for the health and the natural environment on our planet. So again, I think as more and more data become available thanks to technology, digital tech, the solutions for all of these challenges are going to become more and more obvious. And solutions like carbon pricing, or even something more modest that's being debated now, a border carbon adjustment mechanism, that will recognize that the United States is a better environmental actor than most other developed or developing countries, certainly in the world. All of these policy instruments are going to there's going to be a lot of certainty and clarity surrounding them, and it's going to be easier to arrive at decisions. We're still at a time where there's enough of a gray area where people can create distractions and have all these silly debates about whether we should be embracing ESG or not and how. And by the way, there's some valid questions there, right? I don't just mean to dismiss that summarily. I do think that the chief objective of any company should be to deliver a profit for its shareholders. I don't believe every company is a nonprofit, right, or should act like one. But at the same time, profits must be delivered in a sustainable way and in a way that doesn't deplete the world's resources for everyone else. So again, I just think that what this sector is delivering to this space is just extremely valuable, and it's going to, in a way, help heal our politics.
So, Kevin, let me come to you on this same question. What role do you see government playing to advance sustainability and digital technology as a driver of it?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question, and I'd like to also commend Carlos and the Climate Solutions Foundation and our other co-chair, Senator Landrieu, for really their leadership in creating a platform and a bipartisan platform and a dialogue where we can talk about sustainability issues and talk about some of these issues around what government should be doing. And I think Carlos hit on it with data and the fact of the government providing more open data in machine-readable formats so you can utilize AI. We're seeing AI used today to identify key centers of emission around the world. So, I think encouraging the use of AI when it comes to sustainability is a role the government can play, but also promoting and harmonizing sustainability reporting and disclosure risks so we can kind of measure the carbon footprint a little bit better and understand it. Encourage any policy vehicle, including international frameworks, to include language related to sustainability. And I think the government can also play a role by increasing awareness of carbon emissions, including Scope 3, with direct measurement when possible, and also using digital technology to do so across enterprises, including tracking the materials, processes, recyclability of products through the supply chain, and to keep track of this progress. And continue to support the use of metrics, and unleash public government data sets, promote data interoperability, harmonized standards, digital skills for a more sustainable workforce, and perhaps creating a mineral tracking through the supply chain as well. As I know, critical earth, critical minerals is also another issue within the supply chain that the government is looking at as well. And also to encourage the use of emerging technologies and invest in research and development, such as AI for breakthroughs in this area that we can better work on together to track sustainability outcomes. And SAP is doing an interesting project with the Government of Scotland. And we launched it during COP26, and it's called the Waste Insights Project. And we're working with the Government of Scotland to unify and analyze data from consumer goods, retailers, waste managers, investors, NGOs, and local government. And through that, we're identifying the opportunities to recapture waste materials and accelerate the transition to a circular economy. And we're using this showcase to demonstrate how AI can play a key role in helping to power innovation when it comes to the circular economy. And we're working with the Circular Economy Agency, Zero Waste Scotland. So I found that intriguing that a government has a zero waste agency. So that's something that perhaps the U.S. can look as a model within our government to tackle some of these issues and help put forward some more focus on within the government's approach when it comes to the circular economy.
Now, I certainly have more questions for our esteemed panel, but I don't want to monopolize the opportunity. So does anyone here have any questions for either Carlos or Kevin? that you'd like to bring forward? Don't be shy. All right, as you're thinking about that, give yourself an opportunity. I may have surprised you. As you're thinking about that, let me come back. One of the things, sort of building off this last question about the role of government and thinking about the previous panel, I'm curious, is there a way that we need to spark or set further the climate and conditions for greater innovation that supports more sustainable behavior and performance? Is there a collaborative role among government and industry and others that would help sort of energize and sort of push forward the same sort of like moon launch type of analogy that we've seen in our nation's history that we need in this area? What are some of the thoughts and ideas that you would have in that regard?
You want to talk about some of the partnerships you have with government? I mean, the Smart Cities Initiative is one we've talked a lot about, and but I think it's SAP is so wonderful at delivering these solutions. But what policymakers are looking for is information. They want to be empowered to make good decisions that they can then justify to their constituents, because some of these decisions are hard, right? Transitions are difficult. People get hurt, people get displaced, and you really need a justification to embark on these transitions. And I think probably every firm represented here, but definitely SAP can deliver a lot of this for, typically we would think corporations and companies, but I think more and more governments are understanding that they have to be more efficient, and perhaps though the end goal is different than that of a for-profit company, the way you get to that end goal can look fairly similar.
Yeah, well, thanks, Carlos. I agree. I think that when it comes to sustainability, many of our customers today see it as a business imperative. And I think what we see in this area too, and on the side of government, is those governments that are most advanced in this area take innovative approaches themselves with stakeholders. We really do see it as a public-private initiative where government doesn't have all the solutions or innovation, the same for the private sector. But we've worked with governments across the US, across the world, and some of the governments that are most innovative are breaking down data silos. And whether it's here in Washington or it's across state government, a lot of agencies and departments are turf orientated, and they may work on a common mission. But when we see, like a former governor of Indiana signed an executive order mandating that state agencies share data when it comes to addressing infant mortality, we helped the Indiana state government build a management performance hub in the basement of the state capitol in Indianapolis, where they could monitor state government across those different silos. But that executive order broke down those silos. Today they're using it for sustainability, for innovation. They're using it for predictive analytics to prevent car crashes on the state highway system. They're using it for maternal mortality as well. But I think that when you have leaders that come together, data is a real key part of that solution. And I think that too, the COP summits have been very effective because this is a global challenge that we have, and it's been very heartening from the industry, the tech industry point of view, to see the U.S. government to take a whole of government approach and send so many leaders from different department and agencies and congressional delegations to have conversations with our partners in different countries as well to address some of these solutions too. And we find that forum, the COP forum, which will be, I guess, in Dubai this year, we'll be participating in that as well. I know the Climate Solutions Foundation will be there. Is really a great platform for international solutions and international partnerships that can highlight some of the things that governments across the world are doing and as well.
Very, very inspiring, and thank you. I'm just going to check and see any quick questions from the audience. Then, Kevin, let me build off a comment that you made earlier, and that is that, if I'm understanding it right, if we think about the next wave of digital transformation, some are calling it the fourth industrial revolution, that you're saying that sustainability is going to be sort of twinned with this. It's going to be a real driver of this next digital transformation. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I do. I think we see it as the next great frontier when it comes to innovation. We're looking closely at the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act, and if you look at that data, it's already created 100,000 new jobs across the United States, and you're seeing clean energy develop in different pockets of the country, from the Battery Belt down south to the Midwest with some of the chips factories and what they're doing there as well. And I do think that especially if you look at, I also want to highlight some statistics that I have here that point to what some of the data that we're seeing. And it's estimated that $90 billion will be invested in climate smart infrastructure by 2030. Between 2020 and 2022, we've seen a 34% increase in global sustainable investments by shareholders. And there are about 60 carbon pricing initiatives and regulations that are scheduled for implementation currently. Sustainability and climate are the #1 concern among millennials and Gen Z job seekers. So it also affects your workforce. So when you're looking to go to work for a company, I think Gen Z and the millennial generation is looking at what are the sustainable practices of that company. So I think that's an impact of the workforce as well. And there's also a 5 times increase in faster growth of sustainable consumer packaged goods. And 48% of CEOs are now implementing sustainability in their business operations. So I wanted to highlight some of those statistics, and that's what I mean in terms of the next frontier. There's different parts of society that are driving this conversation in addition to business, and I think business is very attuned to it and trying to respond to a lot of these segments of society that are bubbling up with these priorities when it comes to climate solutions.
Thank you. And Carlos, I'm going to give the final word to you. So much of what you're doing in the Climate Solutions Foundation relies on collaboration and partnership. What should we be aspiring to in this conversation in terms of further partnership and collaboration?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand that despite how toxic and negative and nasty our politics have been in recent years, if you look underneath the surface on this issue, on the issue of sustainability, climate policy, energy policy, there has actually been a lot of growth and cooperation between the two parties. When I served in Congress and got here in 2015, there was no dialogue, no conversation. I tell people the biggest challenge with Republicans was not denialism, it was apathy, which is a lot worse because it means you don't even care, you're not interested. At least if you're a denialist, you've maybe taken the time to come up with a theory, even if it's wrong. But if you don't care, like, there's really not even a conversation to be had. And that has changed drastically. Since then, we've seen Republicans and Democrats work together on the American Energy Act, which was a major investment in clean energy technologies. In the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we had at the time a record investment in the clean energy transition. Republicans and Democrats worked together to phase out HFCs, amend the Kyoto Protocol. We have a bipartisan House Climate Solutions Caucus, one in the Senate as well. So there's a lot of good things happening in this space, and I would just encourage all of you to do what you can through your different advocacy instruments to encourage Republicans and Democrats to continue working together. One-party policy tends to not be sustainable, tends to be under constant threat. That is anathema to the concept of sustainability, which is what I think all of us here are trying to advance. So make your contribution to encourage more and more bipartisan cooperation on this topic, and know that you're not starting from scratch, that despite all the headlines we see every day, there's actually a lot of positive movement when it comes to this issue on the Hill and in states and cities as well.
Please join me in thanking our panelists, Carlos and Kevin.